Well, hello, and welcome to another episode with somebody who I'm going to say is going to win the award for the best name ever. Dr. Priscilla Archangel is my guest this week. Priscilla, welcome.
Thank you so much, David. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
We've got a host of things that we want to talk about today, but I try to get people to start off with just the 30-second bio. Give us your work history and your leadership history in 30 seconds.
Sure. Well, I spent the first 30 years of my career in the automotive industry, primarily in a host of global executive leadership roles, human resources, and organizational development. And along the way, I developed a passion for leaders, working with leaders to help them develop, grow, expand their capabilities, because I believe that everything rises and falls on the quality of leadership that you have in an organization. So I decided that after about 30 years of that, I really wanted to expand my horizons and go out on my own. And so we can laugh for a moment, going from a Fortune 10 company, in fact, to a company of one as a solopreneur. But the point is the opportunity to work with a variety of different organizations and helping them to develop successful leaders in a variety of ways in terms of the beliefs, the values, the behaviors, and the priorities of their organization. And I have the opportunity to do a lot of work these days also in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's speaking and writing.
Well, and thank you. I appreciate that. It's quite a range of going from a large corporation to working on your own. And that theme that you're raising, I often talk about is culture is a reflection of leadership, which is what you're talking about, really, isn't it? If we don't have the right leadership, or whatever leadership we get, we're going to get a culture that reflects that.
That's correct. That's correct.
You and I are in the same kind of business. And the reason that we connected was we have a mutual client who I've been working with for a while and has tapped into your skills around the DEI world. But I wanted to spend the first part looking at the diversity, equity, and inclusion side of things, because you were in corporate America as a HR exec and an African-American HR exec and a female African-American. So
all of that, yes.
And then you transition to doing the work on your own. I'd just be interested what the differences are in your mind between being the internal resource and being an external resource.
Yeah, that's an excellent question you've asked, David, because as I thought about it, even leading up to this call, there are some huge differences. And so one of the things that I thought of is when you are the HR leader in an organization, and I've led a whole variety of organizations across my corporate career from an HR standpoint. But when you're the HR leader, you are able to be the constant driver and intervener on issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because you see every day in big and small ways how it impacts the organization. And I was able to also lead my HR team who worked at various other levels in the organization in different priorities around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I've also held roles where I was the diversity and key diversity role, driving diversity initiatives across broadly the organization. So you see so much more, you see more opportunities, you understand deeply the culture of the organization and how you can intervene in it. And then as a consultant, it is more of an intermittent thing, okay? Because as you well know, David, I come in for a meeting, I come in for a dialogue, I come in for a conversation, maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 4 hours, maybe even it's 8 hours at one time, but it's still in and out. And I do the best that I can to understand the inner workings of the organization, but I'm not there all the time to find many opportunities. I can only see snapshots of those opportunities.
Yeah, I've often told people as a consultant, if they want the real work, it's really expensive because I'm going to be there every day.
That's true. That's true. And so in that context, I try to really leverage both the HR team internally and the other leaders that I'm working with internally, because it's important for them to understand the priority, to grasp it, to understand their behaviors, to understand the things that they need to do, because they are really in the day-to-day of it, okay? So as a consultant, I work with them, whereas as an HR leader, I was in the middle of it to see it too.
So really, it's
Um,
going from having the authority to do it and being in there to
that's right.
having the influence, but also seeing the uh, what I call the uncle or aunt perspective, that
Hmm.
I see the kid grow up because I only get to visit him every month, as
Hmm.
opposed to living with them real time,
Yeah.
where you don't actually see the growth necessarily.
That's right. And so that's a nice uncle and aunt perspective. When you're the parent, you're there every day. Um, and you also see a variety of priorities. So as an HR leader, I saw a variety of priorities. And every day, quite frankly, I'm deciding what's going to be the most important thing I'm going to push today, because I can't do it all. I can't, not only can't I do it all in the context of my work, but I can't bring up every issue to them as you've got to do this and you've got to do that. Okay, so I have to balance the priorities, and what's the biggest issue I need to reflect to them today that they need to take action on. Versus as a consultant, it is the only priority, but then again, I'm not there on kind of a regular, consistent basis. So
And it's the only priority for you
that's true.
because of the work
That's
you're
true.
doing, which is, I mean, even that's interesting, because how did you balance internally and very large automotive organization,
Mhm.
that idea of you may have had all of these priorities, but then you put them forward and you see people cast it
Mhm.
down the list. So it
Mhm.
suddenly became the 15th priority of 10.
Mhm.
How did you feel with that? How did you work through that?
Yeah. So obviously, in my role, there were always things that I thought, well, this should be number one, number two, number three, number four priority. But I'm working with a group of leaders and I have to balance their interests and their concerns. Okay. And so, quite frankly, if I saw that a priority I thought should be number two was really number 10 in their minds, either I had to find a way to drive its importance up. Okay. Now, that means I wasn't necessarily saying, hey, John, you've mentioned John before as kind of the standard guy.
I think
Okay.
there's more Fortune 500 CEOs called John than there are women.
Probably,
Yeah.
probably. Yeah, absolutely. But I couldn't just say, hey, John, this has got to be number two instead of number 10. What I had to do instead was find the right business imperative so that John would want to make it number two instead of number 10. So also it wasn't just me as the HR leader and also me as the Black female, okay, saying you've got to do this, you've got to do that. I needed John to take it as his idea. All right. So it might be, here's a problem in the organization. And one of the ways that we might solve this problem in the organization is if this priority were number two instead of number 10. So
So,
it was things like that.
and you raised that. How many times did you find yourself raising one of those issues and you really had mythical John look at you as if to say, "Oh, here comes the black woman again"?
I can't even remember. Are you kidding? I mean, let's say across 30 years in corporate America, I can't even remember. All right. Now, the other thing I will say is as you are in roles, as we are in these roles, we learn to balance, juggle, maneuver, and I don't mean maneuver in a negative way, but just manage what we do on a day-to-day basis. All right. I mean, let's face it. I may come into my boss John's office with kind of a list of topics that we really need to talk about, but he may have another priority that takes precedence. Or the way the first two conversations are going, I know I'm never going to get to the third one, which is one that's really important to me as well. So you really have to be flexible, be adaptable. Um, there are many times when I saw issues, and this is whether it was diversity or any other issue. I saw issues that I thought were really important that we needed to do something specifically about. And I might have brought it up in a certain way and, you know, didn't get the level of engagement that I wanted. And I literally just had to wait. And that became an art form almost. Okay. All right. So it's wait until something is really going on where I can bring it back again. And it's like, oh, well, that's a great idea. We really should do that. Yeah. I know I said that 3 weeks ago, but it wasn't time yet.
So, I mean, you're really talking about focusing on the war, not the battle.
Yes,
And
that's
but
absolutely it.
you may say,
Absolutely
"I'm
it.
losing this battle, but so let me withdraw tactfully, so that then I can better prepare to continue to
That's
fight
right.
this war."
Because if I don't keep the right relationship going, then I'm losing the war. Okay.
Right.
If I keep the right relationship going, then the leaders that I'm working with are open, they're receptive. I'm viewed as, part of the solution instead of kind of just bringing problems forward that they may not be ready to handle, even if I have some particular ideas. But at the same time, it's not like I can bring a package solution tied up with a bow. We've got to work through it together, okay? I have some ideas, I have some thoughts always, but we've got to work through it together because I've got to hear from them and they've got to own it and recognize it. Right. And we've got to collaborate together on the right solution.
Because, the other thing you raise is withdrawing your ego. So if Mythical John says the following week, this is an idea I've come up with, you don't scream and shout and say, hang on a minute, I said that last week and you ignored me. It's a matter of good.
Oh, what a wonderful idea, John.
What a great idea. And it doesn't matter who owns it. We're moving the ball down the field.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, you're right. Ego has to get out the way. And then as a Black female, let's face it, I bring that to every conversation I have. And also in all of those conversations, I'm always constantly assessing, are they responding to me in the way they're responding because I'm a Black female? Okay. So, one of the critical success factors is having white male allies, having the Mythical John be an ally for this topic as well. All right. I can go so much further, so much faster. We can go so much further and faster together if we're working together on it. Okay. But if the leader is threatened by it, doesn't understand its importance, then we're not going to get anywhere. You mentioned in another conversation we had the frame of conscious incompetence.
I think since George Floyd, we've seen a lot of white people become consciously incompetent, yes, as opposed to previously they were unconsciously incompetent.
Yes. So at least with conscious incompetence, that's something we can all work with, all right? When I admit that I don't know and I'm willing to learn, then we can engage in conversation. We can learn together, all right? And it's not even a matter that you have to agree with me and everything that I say, but it is important to learn more about the topic, learn more about what the issues are, listen to me with respect, listen to other people's perspectives with respect, okay? One of the fantastic things, unfortunately, that has come out of the George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all the other the senseless killings is so many more people of color are writing about their experiences today. Not something that happened 5 years ago or 30 years ago, but their experiences today in corporate America. And it's helping these business leaders understand, wow, it is still something like this is still going on around us because, someone will look at me when I tell about my experience and say, I didn't think that you were, dealing with that. I didn't think that that was going on with you. And it makes them really stop and think about either their behaviors or the behaviors of others around them, or it's just things that people do and don't realize, it's microaggressions. I've had someone talk to me about, she got in an elevator with her coworkers and they were admiring her new hairdo and everybody wanted to touch her hair. And that's a microaggression. No one likes that. Okay.
Yeah, I was reading about that recently. How many times have you been described as articulate and then roll your eyes?
That's another excellent example. I've had it's interesting. I've had people apologize both to me and to others in the past couple of months because they became woke, as the term is now, and realized that that's offensive. And they basically, came to me or I've heard them go to others and say, please forgive me. I didn't, mean to offend or, et cetera. Yep. And so, no hard feelings. We just appreciate that recognition. So.
Yeah, well, that's the challenge of how do they move from conscious incompetence to conscious competence.
That's right.
Now, so, and I think you're seeing a lot of that where people are recognizing that and bringing up the apology for the behavior and then looking for help. So on that note, you've been working both internally and externally now. What are some of the success factors that you see to create a truly EDI organization and culture?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one of the key success factors is what's the why? All right. So as an organization wants to move forward in this, why do they want to do it? Is it just because George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and others died? Is it just because it's the thing to do to, write a statement and, make sure you have a chief diversity officer? Or is it because they really feel a deep moral imperative that we've got to change our society? We've got to treat people with equity. We've got to treat people better, all right? That there is no difference just because of the color of our skin and things like that, okay? If they have a deep moral imperative as a driving factor, that's one of the reasons I certainly admire the efforts of the CEO of PwC. There's an organization called the CEO Action Coalition also, that is bringing CEOs together who are committed to addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion. But having the right why that then provides the leadership drive and support that is needed to really bring about change.
Mm-hmm. So have the right why. Make sure that we're committing to this, and what's the next step after that? We've got the why.
Yeah. So then it's being willing to make an investment. Okay. Now, notice the word I choose. It's investment. It's not spending money, or it's not just resources of, time, talent, and all like that. Okay. But it's making an investment in the future of your company, because your company is only as good as your people. I don't care what product or what service you provide, your company is only as good as the people who are there. So if you are willing to invest in developing and growing your people, in bringing in a variety of perspectives. See, one of the reasons companies fail or companies struggle even is because they get a very homogeneic perspective of how to run the business and how to succeed and how they make decisions and what breadth of options they consider, all right? But when you are open to greater diversity of perspectives from people who come from a variety of different backgrounds, who come from a variety of different approaches, okay, that makes a key difference in the outcomes of your business, all right? And it's not just having diverse people in the business, it's having a culture where you really pull in those perspectives, and where you want people to speak up, and you want people to contribute, and you want people to debate diverse perspectives on business problems, okay? That's what brings better outcomes.
So one thing is to create more diversity. The second thing is to value it truly as an integral part of the organization.
Yes.
I was having a conversation with someone recently that was, talking about this EDI issue, and they were saying, they're trying to do it, and they get a couple of interns from Kettering every year, and they never seem to get anybody but white guys. And when I was sharing this example with a few other EDI folks, somebody just said, well, have they thought about a historically black college or university as tapping into them rather than just Kettering? And it was like, oh, that's a completely sensible question that most people have missed because of their, again, that unconscious incompetence that they were in.
Yes. And then even to go many steps beyond that, it's not just, oh, now I'll go to a FAMU or a Howard University or whatever, okay? It's what types of experiences do those people find if and when they even accept an internship or a co-op assignment at your company, okay? Yep. Is it just, well, I'll get them in the door and that's it? No, you have to make sure you have an inclusive environment that values diversity, where people don't look at certain employees and say, well, because maybe you're a white male, you're capable of this, because you're a black male or a black female or a white female, you're capable of something different. How are you treating them? How are you being inclusive with them? How are you valuing their ideas? Okay. So it's the whole, kind of birth to death cycle, I'll call it, of when you're first approaching a prospective employee, even what's on your website, okay? I can't tell you how many times. Now, people look at different things, but when I'm researching companies and I look on their website, I always look at their leadership, and I look at the leadership pictures. Is there any diversity there? Okay, on the board, on the executive committee, on the officers, is there any diversity there?
Yep.
Okay. when I don't see any, it says something to me loud and clear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and don't go looking at our website anytime soon, please, because we're trying to work on that. But yes, you're absolutely right. It's something that, especially in the leadership ranks, when you're faced with 10 white guys called John, it sends a message. And I talked to Carlos Rangel in episode 15 about diversity in the asset management industry, and one of the things he was talking about was the lack of mentoring and coaching for people of color and come into that world. Whereas, if that white person comes in, they find it either in their family network or somewhere else. And so making a conscious effort to provide mentoring, coaching for
absolutely
people of color as they enter the organization is another demonstration of we're not just saying it, we're acting on it.
Yeah. There is and I love the book White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, and the way she describes it, and I'll paraphrase in my words, okay? But walking into a room as a Black female, okay? I always know, am I one of few, one of many? I'm always feeling the demographics of a room when I walk into it. I'm always thinking about how are people responding to me as I walk into the room, okay? So the fact that I'm a woman, the fact that I'm a Black woman is ever present with me. But the way Robin DiAngelo describes it, people who are white don't have that sense of their race. Okay, and I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but the way she describes it, people who are white don't have that same sense of their race. They just are. Okay, whereas for me, I have a sense of it. Now, I will tell you, I live in a pretty nice upscale neighborhood, okay? And I like to walk, but I am a 59-year-old Black woman, and I am still very conscious of myself walking in my neighborhood, which does have some diversity, but these days you never know what's going to happen. And so I'm always trying to make sure that, if I walk by someone, I'm pleasant, I speak, I wave, I don't try to, look suspicious or dangerous or, and I'm a 59-year-old Black woman. Mm-hmm. And this is something that I am still conscious of. And that's a shame. That's a shame.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely right. That I walk into a room and there's no issue. And then I open my mouth and actually I get the opposite because I'm living in North America and people then suddenly say, oh, wow.
Yes.
So it's the extreme privilege. Mm-hmm. Which is the complete opposite of what you're talking about. So mm-hmm. I appreciate where that goes. And it's and we were talking in a preamble beforehand about this idea of going from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence is still a step. Mm-hmm. It may not be the right step or the total step yet, but at least it's a step in the right direction.
This is a step. That
right. Seems to have happened in the last 6 months. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm conscious of our time as well, and I could talk to you all day about this.
Sure.
But I also wanted to give you the opportunity. I know you have an exciting project on the cards at the moment.
Yes. It's been a labor of love, but I have a new book that will hopefully be published by the end of this year, and it's called Leader Vantage: 7 Essential Steps to Peak Leadership, and it's a collection of writings on leadership on 7 themes woven into a very real story of leadership challenges that people face. And so I talk about 7 particular keys that give leaders an advantage, and that is purpose, their perspective, their values, their traits, their behaviors, tools, and ideas. And it's a great read. It's one of those where each chapter is probably about 3 or 4 pages, and you should read no more than 1 chapter a day, because there's questions for you to think about, questions to challenge you. So just kind of read 1 chapter a day.
I always say that about Brene Brown's work is read a chapter at a time and then pause for a while.
That's right. Pause and think about that.
So this is the second book?
This is my second book. And my first book is The Call to Faith-Centered Leadership: Transformational Lessons for Leaders in Challenging Times. So both are available on my website, PriscillaArchangel.com, and also on Amazon. The newest one will be on Amazon as soon as it's published. You can pre-order on my website, or you can go to Amazon once it's published. But yes.
Yeah, we were trying to get it, hoping it was published before.
I know. I know.
But maybe we'll have to come back and talk about that at a later episode.
That's right. COVID-inspired delays. So.
Yeah. So if I switch back, I know you had a couple of principles, the why and the creating the culture to welcome people. Without running out of time too quickly, it sounded like you had a few more to add to that.
Yeah, sure. So one important thing is having white allies. So David, as we were kind of leading up to this conversation, you asked me, you're asking me some really good questions, okay? But you asked the question, what do I expect from white guys?
Yeah, and I got the answer I didn't really want.
So if I'll just say now, as I thought about that, my first, and maybe it was reflexive answer, but it was nothing, all right? And I was sad as I thought about that. I was really sad, but it was response born from experience of, that's kind of what it's been like, okay? I mean, sometimes it was, some level of concern, but, it wasn't like I have felt like as a Black woman, I've gotten a lot, all right? But ultimately, what I want is white guys, the Johns, to be allies. I want them to move from conscious incompetence to conscious competence and beyond, okay? I want to be able to have these conversations. And I will say, I've had more conversations in the past 4 or 5 months, or richer conversations with people who are not my race, with white people, than I've ever had in decades. And it's been absolutely wonderful, okay? But to want to know, to want to learn, to want to grow, and to become an ally in this together, okay? I and most Black people I know, we don't want any special considerations. We just want to be treated with equity, okay? And so we need allies to bring additional light to this. And so that's why I love when I see CEOs stepping up in their companies, because they are the ones who will drive change in their companies too. That's what we need.
Okay. Priscilla Archangel, Dr. Priscilla Archangel, thank you very much for joining us today. And I look forward to picking up the book, and maybe we'll have you back to talk about that. But thank you for sharing your experience and inspiration, and stay healthy.
Thank you so much, David.